And notice how I am actually recording right now. Continue to talk about everything. Except, no, not everything.
Jeff, the followers of Jeff, those who are.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Followers.
That's our goal. Everyone's gonna.
I mean, yeah, there goes. This boy over here, right in the background, actually is the man who created Jeff, the Jaffa Knight, the man who had powers from the Jaffa field. He could turn anything he hit with the rays into Jaffa cakes. Not all of them were just Jaffa cakes. Some of them had the ability to be up to like 5 feet, like tall and 5 feet wide. He also could make them hard, or he could make them shoot fire out of them. If someone broke the chocolate and got to the Jaffa center, they'd like set ablaze when in contact with the air or something like that.
An NPC, or not an NPC, but a character based off of Jaffa cakes. I mean, that's just scream sponsorship. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like,
how are they not already throwing money at you?
I know, right? It's like
we'll do that.
I think that's a good goal for us. If we can get a sponsorship from Jacob's for Jaffa cakes, I will be pretty satisfied with that. Just
Bill
like
and
I
I
am
just,
with their cookies.
no, they're great. They're considered like little cakes. Some people call them little cookies. Some people call them little biscuits. But they are cakes. I guess that's the best way to call them, considering that's what they name them.
That's the name.
It's that moment when McVitie's like actually get in contact with us, just because they're like, oh yes, we see that you have called our Jaffa cakes cookies. Yeah, no, we put the name on the front there.
It is specifically cakes.
Yeah. They get like really weird with us, like, no, we don't mind the sponsorship, because I mean it's free sponsorship, but don't call them cookies.
Yeah, don't call them cookies or biscuits or cakes. For all of our multicultural peoples in the world.
It's multicultural to say cakes instead of cookies.
Well, I mean, to me, this is a cookie.
Yeah.
That's a good cookie.
Oh, so annoying because I'm trying to cut down a lot of sweets and carbs, and my brother's got like a 2-pack of like what were called Jaffa cakes, but they're like rip-off Jaffa cakes, and he doesn't like them. And I was like, but they look so good, and I'm like, there's basically 1.5 packets downstairs right now that I can't eat, and that makes me sad. That makes me real sad.
Well, there's one. There's one upstairs. When I said my AC upstairs went bad, and it's 95 degrees upstairs, I looked at the Jaffa cakes that were up there, and they're just melted. They're melted. No. So I could eat it with a fork or a spoon. They're still good per se, but they're not perfected as they.
They're not
anymore. They're not
as good as what they could be.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna show you the first picture out of these. These are basically some of the things that my brother has done. Like I'll put them.
I think Ben's frozen again.
Oh no.
Ben, are you there? Just have him in one shot. Hopefully we can get Ben back. We're not having very good luck with our streaming today.
No.
We tried to get a hold of Adan and we lost him like 5 times. Yeah. And now Ben's...
Either that or Ben's leaving a lot earlier than he said.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, I'm totally up for being there for like 2 minutes and then I'm out. You guys have
you got us for the rest of it.
Oh, and we lost him. Watch our viewers go down. Like, oh, Ben's not there. No, we're gonna keep our viewers because they love us.
Yes.
Just stare at the camera until you love us.
We're so cold and lonely without you.
No, but yeah, Ben. We loved having him these episodes and doing the one shots with him and talking with him and getting a lot of advice from him and stuff like that. So it's really really cool to have that relationship. But next episode, and I'll go into that later, we're gonna have Adan. I'm super excited. He is a ball of energy that is amazing. We met him today. He was from Argentina. I'll put his link of his YouTube channel up on our YouTube channel and our stuff. He does animation at D&D. And he also sings too. At the end of his episodes, he'll sing a song.
I haven't seen any of his videos yet, but you've now just given all the spoilers.
Yeah, I have. but go watch them. They're great.
I definitely am going to be binge watching them tonight. Me personally, I would recommend definitely watching his videos because I saw about the first 30 minutes and the animations are actually really good. So if you really enjoy Puffin Forest, if you really enjoy 12D20, definitely check out that guy as well, Adan.
So
He's a cool guy. He was a cool guy.
Talking with Ben right now. So what happened was he looked outside because his internet was not working. There's workmen outside and the phone cables working on the cables outside. So he's waiting to get his internet back up, and I'm just going to let him know to come back on. That we'll start a little bit without him. We'll start without him, but I'll tell him he can pop back on.
Show must go on. Just nervous sweat dripping down.
All right. He's not happy. He's like, this is terrible timing.
Awesome.
Okay, so what we were going to talk about today, but before that, definitely, I'm Des. I'm from the 12D20. Don't you leave.
I'm just rotating my chair.
You move, and I will get mad. I'm Des. I'm from the 12D20 group. We do Puzzle Traveler. We do this podcast. This is our group. And we also do Pathfinder and definitely a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And what else do we do? Oh, we're about to do animation because, and that's how I'm going to introduce Joe, is because we are about to start Animite Tales with Joe. And Joe is an RPG game developer. He works with the Baytarians. You are the Baytarians. You and your brother.
I am one of two Baytarians.
One of two Baytarians. And you are from the UK. I'm from Texas. Joe's from the UK. That's why he has that lovely accent that Adan mentioned before. That smart accent. And this episode is not brought to you by Jaffa Cakes, but maybe in the future it will be.
Just so many comments last episode, why haven't they mentioned Jaffa Cakes? Jaffa Power, we know about Jaffa Cakes more so than the rest of you. It didn't really fit in with the rest of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that was crazy that after one episode we mentioned it one time, and then the second episode there's almost a riot that there's not Jaffa Cakes mentioned.
Either that or Jeff, the Jaffa Warrior.
Jeff, the Jaffa Warrior. So our goal is to have fun and to get sponsored by Jaffa Cakes. But we'll start talking about our topic today that, while we're waiting for Ben and his internet troubles. Ben is the host and creator of Puffin Forest. That's a YouTube channel. He has characters like Absurd and Trixie Starbright. Ding. And my personal favorite, I don't know if you've seen it, Joe, it was Detective Savage Rage. I love that character.
Detective Savage Rage. Detective Clancy, or Inspector Clancy, is now personally one of my favorites because it was a character that was optimized for terrible use of all sorts of different bad stats rather than oh yeah, I am the best. Instead, he's a character who believes he is the best, but is the complete opposite. And I love that character so very much.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, he released that just like 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago.
Yeah, just at the beginning or at the end of our podcast last week.
At the end.
Oh wait, no,
I
2
think
weeks
it
ago.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully Ben will be able to make it back on. He was on for like a smidgen, just a little bit. From it, like it was weird. He was on for like the 20 minutes. Somebody says, "Where's Ben? Who are these unimportant people?" Thank you for the wonderful feedback. Hello. Oh, Item Pouch. Oh my gosh, it's Item Pouch. Oh, go check out his channel too. I did a what was it? A one shot with Ben and Item Pouch. He was a really funny guy too. So if you have YouTube, who doesn't? I was so excited because I saw his name pop up, and I'm a fan of Item Pouches too. So go check out his channel. Hey, thanks for saying hello, bud.
Thanks, Des. Now I have no room to sleep tonight. We're watching about at least 3 YouTubers, like entire channels.
Yeah, Adan, Ben, and Item Pouch. No pressure there. No pressure, Joe.
Red Dice Diaries.
And Red Dice Diaries. So that's 4. Yeah. John from Red Dice Diaries will be on episode 5. Thank you.
Yes.
I can count 5. Yes, I'm moderately important. Thank you, Justin.
I am important.
Joe is very important to me because he's my co-host. But today we will be talking about RPGs while we wait for Ben. And again, if Ben's not here in person, I have a little animation of him, and hopefully I don't get sued. So when we're saying, hey, who's done, Fate Core, we could be like, oh, I've done Fate Core before. It was confusing, but I DM'd. No, I've played it before. So I have little sections of like where Ben has played, and he put that in there. And the one thing I love about Joe being in this podcast is that you're an RPG developer. Yes. And so being able to talk about these different systems and getting your experience on how, feedback from players and getting to know, have you compared like different RPGs to when you're making Animite Tales? Have you done that?
I have done it so much that it's pretty much instinct now. Like when basically for those of who do not know, I actually went to uni video games development, and I do on occasion like do coding and programming, but not certain things that I really would sort of release. It's just more to keep my my mind constantly in the sort of like mode of like programming C# and using Unity and Unreal, and I started getting into doing CryEngine, and I kind of prefer the other two, but I understand why people enjoy and using CryEngine. But I was doing that for 4 years, and once I got out,
I have not heard of CryoGen. What is that?
CryEngine is one of the game engines that actually, funny enough, was the thing that made was the engine that was used to make funnily enough Crisis 1, 2, and 3. There are a few other games, but I'm pretty sure the only other games I know that have been made on the CryEngine, some of them are well known, and others are just kind of well known for being bad. So
we just had a comment. I just had a comment from Item Pouch. It says CryEngine is all about making everything look pretty.
Yes, it is. That's one of the things where I didn't really get on well with it, because I was like, I really want to do this, and it's like, oh, well, we've got this rock, and it looks like really well done in 4K. I'm like, I'm not looking for a rock in 4K. I'm looking to I'm just looking to make this item do this particular thing and make it move or make it have an animation.
So is it a video game or RPG tabletop?
CryEngine is basically using it's online. Basically, you can download it online or purchase it online, depending on Depending on what package you get, because they have like student and professional and basically like learner and stuff like that. So I went from uni to making video games, and then about on my last year, I then started thinking like I want to do something that's kind of more relaxed, sort of go into something where I can write stories and pieces about that, and then use my knowledge on mechanics and balance, and then bring that into a particular, sort of like field. And eventually I started thinking like, I really want to make an RPG that does this and does that. And I've always enjoyed like, crossovers and customization, to the point of which eventually I was just like, I'm going to make this, and I'm going to have all of these different parts of my own universe make up this other one. And along the way, there's quite a lot of puns and like urban legends that have been changed and shifted. And like, oh, this is the first time that this has ever been uttered in the world, and stuff like that. And that's how the Animite Tales was born. And at the moment, it's a very small infant waiting to be prototyped, tested, upgraded, and financially helped along the way.
So who was the first one to think of the Animite Tales? Was it you or your brother?
For the title, we went through like probably 10, 13 titles. At first it was just heroes and villains. Then it was like D&D heroes. It was all sorts of like weird names that we kept trying to come up with. Eventually it was Superhero Society, which is SHS. Because then we found out like abbreviations for Dungeons and Dragons was always there, like M&M for like Mutants and Masterminds, like D&D, and it was like, okay, so we need to come up with a good abbreviation for this particular thing, and we couldn't figure out one. And it's like eventually we say, oh, Super Society, and then a friend of mine said, oh, that says SS. Someone might think it's SS.
Yeah.
Oh no! So eventually we were like, let's just put the main thing in the title, because like in Dungeons and Dragons you have a large amount of like dungeons, and like one of the biggest things in the game is also dragons. And so we were like, okay, so for us it is not just going to be about superpowers, it's also going to be about how this crystal Animite basically comes about bringing weird things into the very world that it's part of. And so eventually we took that element, and we were just like, so the way that we're going to build this is we're going to have it that it's called Animite Tales, because it's the tales of any universe that has ever had either the blessing or the curse, the misfortune or the luck of being able to find and discover this gem that either changes their world for the better or destroys it for the worse. And that's exactly what it is. It will be more than just one book. Once the actual like game has been made and the mechanics, there'll be one book which was full of their own modules and different ways of how you build it. That will be for superpowers. We've then got one that will eventually have its own realm of different ways as to how the superpower system that we've got and all of the other different systems we've got will be worked into either. We're thinking either magic, because we might very well do magic, and another one which will be more based on kind of like god mythologies, like pantheon mythologies and stuff like that. But it's not going to be like real gods. We have stated that we are never going to have real iterations of any religion whatsoever. We do have certain things where it's like, oh, this man is named Ra, and this woman was named Danu, and it's like, we have these because they're more like references. They're not ever confirmed to be gods. They were just powerful, legendary heroes who were revered as legends.
And those are mainly, I don't think anybody, if they do, it's just a very small amount, really worships, those ancient religions anymore. So to be able to use that is a good reference so that people can get an idea of how it kind of works. And they also have that mentality. It's like, oh, you think of Ra, you think of ancient Egypt, and so you can start building that into your imagination.
No, exactly. And for us, for the last 2 years, almost 3 now, almost the last 3 years, we had that exact thing. As like, we had to have the mentality of okay, so what does D&D do? What does Mutants and Masterminds do? What does any of these tabletops have in common, and what do they all have in their own, different
Mhm.
mechanics. And that's exactly what we did. We were like, okay, so we want to do this differently. We want to add this mechanic. Recently, we've added about like 2-3 more mechanics that none of the like mainstream sort of ones that are most used are actually have. But the main thing that makes ours a bit more unique is the way that we sort of have customization and level ups, and it's more based on like the activities you do rather than just the people you defeat. So you can actually play the game without any combat, or you can play it entirely heavy on combat, because it's all to do with more strategy than it is to do with just pure power. Although we do actually have a saying of the fact that pure power does help. But it's how sort of like how you sort of use the pure power, because we want it so that then a person, if they were to do either PvP or they were to accidentally go to the boss too early, then it's the concept of oh no, this guy is level 15 and you are level 0, and there is no way for you to figure a way to defeat them. So we've actually got it that like any species can either learn abilities or techniques of their own that will allow them to do those things, or they can actually get equipment and items that will eventually help them, if not straight away help them in those particular situations.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I grasped onto, and I really liked. That's why I wanted to switch to the Animite Tales system. Was that compatibility? Whenever as a DM writing stories as well as being a player. Oh, but Ben sent us a picture of they're working out on his tower.
Oh, jeez.
He feels so bad.
Oh,
It's okay, Ben. We'll wait for it.
it's
No.
all right, man.
But if he comes on later, that's fine. But yeah, he's sending me pictures. He's like, this is terrible. Justin had a question. He said, for Joe, you have some cool ideas for the world and setting in your game. Why did you decide to make a whole system around it versus just creating a setting to be used in an established RPG system?
Now, actually, so many people have asked me this question, but not exactly like that. Some people have gone, oh, why not just make a homebrew and make up your own mechanics?
But
thinking,
item pouch just said money. No, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no. As much as that is actually somewhat true, it was also because that as growing up, I always wanted to do something. I wanted to build and make my own systems. I wanted to build and make my own game. But when I came out of uni, I was so crushed and like buried under all technology, and I was like, I really enjoy using and programming technology, but at the same time, you could make a game for a year on Unity, on anything, on any computer program or computer device, and you could be no further than if you were to have done it within a week. And it's all down to scheduling. It's all down to how much time you can put into it, how much time you will put into it. But also it's down to like, if you get a bug and you personally can't fix it, and you don't have any friends that can fix it, and you are looking online that you can't fix it, that project could be done. Like, it could be done either forever or for the next few months. And I had the privilege of having friends that could help me out, and I had the privilege of being able to help my friends out in those exact situations. But if you are on your own and you have like not the greatest internet, then you are basically just being doomed to fail, and it is so difficult. And one of the things that I wanted to do with when I was making this, I wanted people to sort of like play in a scenario of like, okay, so we've got these particular rules and these particular abilities, but I was like, how could I make it easier for people to like sort of jump on, whether you're a veteran player of RPGs and tabletops, or if you were a complete noob?
Mm-hmm.
Because we actually have Saturday sessions in our local games table.
Mm-hmm. That's how you get your wonderful comments too from
yeah, exactly. And half of them have played them before. In fact, some of them have played them way more than I have.
Mm-hmm.
But others have come in and they've never touched D&D or heard of D&D before, and they're just like, yeah, no, I thought it'd be good. I thought I'd give it a try. And they sit down, and yeah, on the first couple of sessions, it's quite difficult. But now they are learning the ropes as easy as or as difficult as some of the other players who have been playing D&D for a while. So for me personally, it was more about my own creation in the world of tabletop to create this kind of like balance of like, I want everyone to be able to make whatever they want with the guidelines that I've set, so that then it's like it works for everyone else. But there are so many different ways that I can actually make this scenario. Like, for instance, we actually used the mechanics and played a homebrew version of the game for 2 weeks, and it was it was set in the One Piece universe. So that was quite interesting. Like we had people doing it, playing the game where they were like, oh, we have these abilities from One Piece. And they were like pirates, and they went across different oceans and stuff like that. And I was the GM at the time, and that's exactly one of the things that I enjoyed about this, is that like the system is easy enough to get into and easy enough for you to build it up. I think I might have answered it. I hope. Sorry for the long explanation.
No, absolutely. You know, that actually, as you were talking, that kind of a question popped in my head for you. You know, looking at this list of RPGs like Fiasco, Dungeon World, Animite Tales, Dungeons and Dragons, Fate, GURPS, all this. You know, we have a huge list. Have you ever had it in your session where somebody has never played any of these RPG systems before? They're not really sure. They're just kind of like, hey, I've heard of this session. My friend told me about it. How do I play? And again, they've never played like even Dungeons and Dragons. Like they don't understand. They don't have any dice. They don't have anything like that. And have you ever had to like explain to somebody what an RPG is?
More times than you'd expect.
Really?
But there have been a lot more people that have been, I guess, accepting to that than you think out of the number. Like I think per session I've probably done over the last 2.5 years, I've made a session and I've probably made about 9 different sessions with at least most of the groups being different people. I'd probably say about like 75% of those people are different people. And each campaign that I've done, I've had at least 2, maybe 3 people out of each session go, I have no idea what's going on here. Can you tell me how to play? And on the first ever session, it was everyone had dice. My friend Kane, he brought a massive bag of dice like this, and he used said dice, and he handed them all out. And he had 5 sets, and I had 2 sets. So I was able to use 2 sets for myself, and everyone had 1 set of dice. So for us, it was easier because it was on tabletop. For the last 2 years prior to the last half of the year, it has mostly been on Discord. So we have a dice roller bot. Like you type in this particular code, and it's like,
I think that's pretty cool. I've never seen that before. Y'all's game.
It's easier because then it has a lot more like, oh, I roll this and I add my strength modifier, which is +3 and +4, and then it's like, oh, it is this exact number in total. And then everyone's like, okay, that's the end number, that's what we want. We have had a few problems with it. Say, for instance, newer players are like, what code do I type again? Or, oh no, I pressed the wrong thing and I have to enter the whole thing again.
Newer players, you mean Des, you mean me. It's like, what?
Not just you, Mike. Mike, if you're out there and listening to this, Mike.
5 times in the first session, I was like, do I put a space in between? You're like, okay, just XROLL. I don't remember if it was you or Will that actually had to like spell it out for me.
I think it was Bill, because at that point I was just like, I want to say it, but I don't want to sound too condescending, because like when you're saying that, like obviously I wasn't trying to be, but at the same time it was more like, if I say how to spell this thing, it's gonna sound like I'm just being an ass. So I was like,
what I didn't get is I didn't understand there was a space. You just said just type in X roll 20, and I'm like, okay, it's not working.
The whole thing.
And then the space.
To be fair, you weren't the only person who did that. We had Dune and we had Mike who did that. And Mike did it 3 times in a row, and bless him, like he's a good player, but yeah, he's done that before. To answer that question though, like yes, I actually have had that many times. People have gone like, "How do I do this?" And even in the Saturday sessions, we at least have once or twice like a session, and that's out of 3 hours. Only once or twice that we'll have. So sorry, what dice am I rolling for this particular thing? And I'll be like, oh, you have to roll a d4 for this attack, or maybe a d6 for this ability. So yeah, I mean, I don't get it as often as I used to, but that's probably because I haven't got newer players in yet. So I will probably cut back to a couple of weeks later after everyone's had their break on the Discord and they're all coming back, and it's just like, I remember now how many times.
It was like 2 weeks. Yeah, we took a 2-week break. But I wanted to compare. I have the book here. So when we did, there's been a lot of me comparing this. Yeah, I say that different ways. Comparing this to Animite Tales. And we have him back. Hey, we're just talking about Faith. Welcome back, Ben. This is Ben. He's from Puffin Forest. He has wonderful characters such as Absurd and Trixie Starbright. Ding.
Oh, this is Ben from Puffin Forest. As if you didn't know.
My internet was down because they were working on it. It was the weirdest time, but it was like the internet went down. I'm like, what the hell? And I go outside, and at the electric tower or the pole, they were up there working on it, and I'm like. So they fixed it, so here I am. I'm back.
Oh, don't worry. We had a substitute for you. Here he is. We just had Ben talking about different stuff every once in a while.
Yeah. Hello.
But yeah, this is Ben from Puffin Forest. He does, again, my favorite character. I mentioned Detective Savage Rage.
Detective Savage Rage.
Detective Rage. Mine was Inspector Clancy. Definitely Inspector Clancy.
I think I watched like Detective Savage Rage like already 15 times already, but it cracks me up. But
mine is the Turtle Friends every time. Every time I watch the Turtle Friends.
Turtle Friends.
Turtle Friends. Yes. But anyway, what were you guys talking about?
So we were talking about Animite Tales, and we were about to compare Fate core system. So and this was just we were just talking about. So I compare this a lot to a lot of stuff. And the Fate core system, what I gathered from it was that it was mainly role playing, and mainly you have a story and it can be collaborative with a bunch of people. The GM, is necessary. They hand out aspects to change the story, and then that's why you roll dice as well. Not very combat heavy. So this was very confusing to pick up at first because the expectation of challenge and combat wasn't there necessarily. Mm-hmm. So that's why we kind of moved from Fate to Animite Tales and that's why I wanted to ask Joe was if somebody wanted to like do an Animite Tales where it was just a story, could they do that?
Where it's just basically there's all story and no combat, or as in like they're going to use the mechanics, but it's their own story.
Correct. They use your mechanics and they create their own story.
100%. Like my brother's done like an entire like his own campaign at the moment, and that's going to be added into the main world at some point. But there was at one point a little bit of a tease of me and him coming up with some kind of like if anyone knows that this is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure version of Animite Tales, where literally instead of having superpowers, everyone had stand powers, and it was like we'd all work on it, the homebrew of everyone's characters together, and then the entire thing would be set out in its own world. So yes, absolutely, you could make up as you go along.
So on the JoJo's thing, side note, I had a player. I was not aware of JoJo. But someone said I want to be a stand user, and I'm like, cool. Like, what kind of a stand? Like,
yeah.
And they said no, a stand user, and I'm like.
Like
yeah, but what kind of a stand?
Like, wait, no. like a musical stand, or
yeah, like a musical stand or something. And it's like no, because there is a power in JoJo's called, or it's a stand. That's literally what it's called.
My favorite one is every single one of us came up with one. It was like, oh, you have to make a musical reference, and it has to have a power based on your personality. And my brother came up with came up with one. I think it was like common people. I was like, the stand basically works in two different ways. It's like either makes you as weak as himself, because his stand has like no physical strength. So basically, it makes everyone within the radius as physically strong and physically capable as his stand. Or the other one, which is eye to eye, where he stares in the eyes of another person and he gets the same strengths and abilities as that stand. However, once that person closes their eyes for more than like 5 or 3 seconds, like he loses that ability in total. It was quite funny, but at the same time we're like, but hang on a second, this means that it could be used really easy. And it's like, oh no, neither of the two of those powers can work together. And also he has to like basically make a hand gesture with one hand and a hand gesture with another hand. So it's visually obvious for him to do that. So someone could actually like grab his hand or even like attack him whilst he's trying to do that. So it's quite funny. But yeah, stand powers are always muddying waters a bit because they're so ridiculous.
Now, Ben, have you used an RPG system where it was zero combat? Because I know when we did the Lord of the Rings and the Fate core system, we tried a combat at the very end between Sauron, your character, and my character, Aragorn's son. And you must have let me roll 6 times, and I still couldn't get a hit on Sauron.
Oh yeah.
So eventually, it turned into just a storytelling session.
Yeah. And it was because, in that one, a lot of the villains are so powerful. It's not like, do you actually defeat them? It's like, no, you're going to defeat them. We're just going to figure out how that resolves. But as far as storytelling systems, I also did, I think it was 7th Sea. Yeah, it was the one that I ran. And the way that one works is you roll D10s and you have sets of dice, and every 10 that you get, so if you get a 5 and a 5, that counts as a 10, count as a success, and then that's how much stuff you can do in a scene. So for example, the scene is you're going to be breaking into this guy's mansion, and everyone rolls. I roll stealth, you roll deception, this other guy rolls. So I get 2 success. So 1 success gets me over the wall, and the other success gets me in the door. And it's like, okay, you're in, or something like that. And so it's in that one, it's so weird because it's like you're rolling, and the higher you roll, like the more actions that you get in the scene. And it's an interesting way to kind of resolve the narrative and kind of go through scene to scene. But then when you get to combat scenes, sometimes it can be a little bit dry because like I roll my attacks and then they roll their defenses, and they're like, okay, I'm going to resolve my 5 defense against his 5 attack, and that gives someone else the ability to come in for their attack or something like that. And so it's once again that the way that system works, it looks as combat as a scene and like what's going on in the scene. And it's the problem, and I mean there's give and take. Like it's nice, it's kind of cool, it resolves quickly, but on the flip side, I do have a lot of players who like having that turn by turn strategy element to it.
Yeah, I think with RPGs, like you said, story is really good, but to have that challenge as well of, we're about to go into battle, will we survive this? I think that kind of adds to like the anticipation, and the stress of it is kind of fun for adrenaline, I guess.
If someone says, "Are we going to survive this?" and your DM is looking at you, kind of like going, "Maybe." I hope. If they say "I hope" or "maybe," you probably shouldn't have been doing that combat session.
Yeah. Here's a question. So with leveling. So I know with Animite Tales, it's a point system.
Yes.
Correct? And there's different, D&D is XP. As well as sometimes they do XP, sometimes they do milestone. It depends on the GM. Dungeon World, was that like a point system? Or was that was XP, wasn't it?
Dungeon World was XP based. And it's like if you explored, if you resolved bonds, if you found something, you would get XP for those things.
Yeah. So how did with you guys thinking about different XP and how leveling your characters, and again those challenges as well, what do you think for you guys has worked well and engaging and fun when it comes to leveling characters? Does that question make sense? Because I just
No, I
made it up
understand.
just
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And I was just
Ben, do you
curious
want to go
about-
first?
Sure, I'll go first. So as far as XP is concerned, it's something I've always kind of like, I don't know about this or that. Whenever you do XP versus for just the monsters, one of the problems is it's like people are running around town. They consider running around town maybe a waste of time because it's like we're not getting XP for this. Sometimes GMs give it, but it's like most GMs that give XP for role playing, they don't give as much as if you had fought. Like they give the most during a fight, and so you're usually incentivized to fight the monsters or go through different encounters. And so for a lot of times I was using milestone XP, and I think that all the systems have their pros and cons, kind of doing one or the other. There was one of the problems that I found was with doing like 8 advancement points or with milestones is that you would have the players, they feel like they don't want to fight, or they completely avoid it, because what happens is, let's say you go through a fight, the best case scenario, you don't lose anything. Like anytime you go into a fight, it's always a problem. You're always going to lose HP, you're always going to lose potions, you're always going to lose scrolls, you're always going to lose spell slots. And so if anything, anytime you're engaging in a fight, you're getting set back. And so the concept of giving people extra XP for a fight actually is like offsetting those costs, because it's like, okay, we're losing XP, we're losing all these things, but we're getting this XP incentive, which is giving us this reward. But the problem is if you take away that XP reward, now the players have no reason to fight normally, because it's like, what, we're going to lose spells, we're going to lose health, we're going to lose all these resources. And so because of that, players in some groups will consider it almost like a problem, like if they get into a fight, like, because if like it's better to bypass it, because then you get to keep all your stuff to use on the boss.
Yeah,
that is true. I mean, with the systems that like I kind of worried about, that was the exact same thing with D&D, where it's like, oh, spell uses, and a friend of mine said like, oh, I was playing a session and I had like one magic missile, because at the time I only had one. I was like, we were going through this area and like everyone kept shouting at me, use the spell. I was like, no, I'm not going to use it yet. And at one point they got like a full rest and he finally got some more spells, and he was like, I'm still not going to use these spells because I have a feeling that there's going to be a boss later. Eventually when they fight the boss, he was like finally getting to use the spells, but at one point one of them goes like, that one of them said like, you've waited an entire session to finally use these attacks. And it's just like, yes, because like if I hadn't, I would have been useless. It's like, yeah, we use this every other situation. And that's kind of the thing that I changed about like Animite Tales, is that like you use natural capabilities and natural abilities, superpowers that are a part. Like the main problem that you have with using them is potentially overuse, such as if you keep using them and you're reckless with them, you could very well like take damage, or people will start figuring out your weaknesses because of the particular powers that you're using. Some powers that are less obvious can eventually obviously be like, yeah, no, this is pretty much invulnerable, this can't be figured out. But then it's like, well, we've created special items in the game that can offset powers, such as like jamming, steal, and nullification. Those particular items can actually be used against people who have powers to stop their powers entirely, but there are still like ways around and against them, but just not so easy. Like that is an all-time weakness, but it is not something that's like it's not omnipotent, because ultimately we don't want it where people cannot literally do anything when they're like touching this stuff. So there's all sorts of different things. For our particular XP system that we actually have technically like three different types of stockpiling XP. We have one for your powers or your character. So it's like your character levels up, and they like each level that they get up, they put that level, that 1 point into a stat, or 1 point into a HP, 1 point into any of the different like auxiliary stats, like I've got strength, but I want to put it under labor so that I'm better at lifting things in this particular scenario. And so it's like you just put your XP there. So we give you XP for it's like 10 points for like doing role play or doing an activity that actually either required a role or did something towards the story or to another character as a whole. We give you 5 XP for like something like, oh, I did role play, but it didn't require like a roll, or it did require a roll, but it was an obvious one that was going to happen. So like, oh, I walk over and I buy a drink and I sit down. It's like my character is stressed, so he's gonna try and take the edge off. And it's like, okay, that will be 5. And it's like, oh, I speak to everyone in the bar because like my character is a very nervous person and is super paranoid. It's like, okay, roll charisma. It's like each success is like, oh yeah, no, you ask these very dangerous looking people because that you are so paranoid, you don't care about how dangerous they are. Like 10 points for that, 20 points for maybe like getting into a particular moment where you actually asked someone that you probably shouldn't have asked, but you did it because that you are putting yourself in danger. We also have a system where every time that you get a natural 20, you get 10 XP from that, and every time that an enemy or a person that you are rolling against gets a natural 1, that also gives you 10 XP.
And actually, you bring up a really good point with the skills. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say enemies, depending on how strong they are, will give you more XP, like 30, 40, 50. And when you're doing anything to do with like a proficiency, either using a weapon or doing a trade, so it's like, oh, I'm a crafter, I'm a blacksmith, I work with technology, I work with building small things, or I'm a tailor, I make clothes, I make rags, or I'm a survivalist, I basically do cooking, or I do brewing. Any of these different particular things, when you succeed with them, you get what's called proficiency points, which go only into those specific traits that you are working with. And so therefore, you could do an entire session where you fight no one, you get barely any like points in your XP, but you are just grinding on doing these particular activities. Like, I've made like 40 different drinks, and I've now, thanks to all the successes I've got, I now have like a higher level in brewing, so that now I can now make better drinks, or better alcohol, understand alcohol or drinks more for the rest of my team, or for just myself. Like we use that sort of system. We use a more tally-based system for trades and proficiencies.
So we had an interesting question. I'm pretty sure this is just a for fun question, but okay, I might be twisting this around a little bit, but have any of y'all, I know I have used RPG, for like drinking games. And well, they said tomfoolery, drunken tomfoolery. And I know I have only because like only when I'm a player. When I'm a DM, like there's no alcohol involved. I can't, that'll give me a headache. But there have been times where I asked the DM before the campaign, one of our group members, Philip, his game, like I was done with an exam. I was like, I need wine this evening. Is it okay if I drink during the campaign? He's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm probably going to drink too. But have you ever used an RPG for like drinking games, just get together with friends, anything like that? Or has it just been like strategy, like definitely strategy purposes only, just for fun like that?
We haven't made it a drinking game, but in the first alpha group, we just had it like every now and again, like a session once every 2 weeks or something. We drink a lot. A friend of mine, Vas, he's Bulgarian and he really enjoys his drinks. So we'd all be like sat there and he'd be drinking probably heavier than anyone else. But no, we did every now and again. But I don't think that we've ever done a drinking game version of Animite Tales or D&D
yet.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I personally, my groups have not. I have not either. Although it's like sometimes I'll have like 1 or 2 players in the past who drank when they played, and there was this one session where it was like it was kind of very slow, like it was kind of run, like there was a lot of players and there was a lot of downtime, and so like 1 or 2 of the players, like they'd bring over some vodka and they'd kind of be mixing drinks. And if their turn would come around, they'd roll the d20, see if they hit. If they didn't hit, they'd go back to drinking.
Take a shot. That would be an interesting, if you roll a nat 20 or a natural 1, you take a shot. Natural 20, somebody else does, or the DM does. Yeah, going into the point system, like comparing GURPS and Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons was published in 1974, and that one came from Chainmail, which is 1971. uh, by Gary. But GURPS was 1986. So there's like, when I researched these different RPGs, there's only a very slim amount, obviously, in the early 70s and 80s of RPGs. And then, all of a sudden in 2009 is when they just started blowing up, because you have the Fiasco. This was published 2009. You have Fate 2013. You have Pathfinder. Okay, so here's a question for anybody who knows and for anybody in the chat room. Would you consider Pathfinder as part of the D&D world, or is it a completely separate RPG system? The reason why I asked this was because somebody got mad on Twitch that we said we were playing D&D and we were playing Pathfinder. But to our group, it was kind of the same, same mechanics. And obviously Pathfinder was created because of the 3.5 D&D. But in your opinion, do you think those two can coexist?
Okay,
or are they completely separate?
So the thing is that it's the same exact, it's pretty much the same system. It's like almost, it's like 98% the same thing. It's just 2% like little holes and stuff like that they fix, or 5%. On the one hand, like I kind of get it, because it's it's not called D&D, it's called something else, or something. But it's the exact same system, and I think part of it also, one of the reasons why there's quite a bit of confusion and the issue is that sometimes people, D&D is way more recognizable than Pathfinder. Like if you say, hey, let's say if I were to go into a group and be like, hey, let's play some Pathfinder. If I'm talking to RPG nerds, of course they're all going to know what I'm talking about. But if I'm talking to just like general population, or just people who don't play RPGs, they're going to be like, what? No, I don't know what that is. And so sometimes we'll say, sometimes people will call the sticky part is sometimes calling Pathfinder D&D. Like, oh, okay, you want to play D&D, and then you hold up Pathfinder. Like, I think that's perfectly fine. Like, I get it. But it's like sometimes Pathfinder nerds are like, but it's a different game. Like, come on,
Yeah, we got somebody actually reported us. Like they were furious because we called Pathfinder D&D, we called Pathfinder D&D, and they were furious at us. And we were like, okay, well, we'll just change the name. So we had to we had our tech guru Justin go in and physically change the name and say, okay, we're playing Pathfinder. And all of us are like, oh, it's D&D. And I appreciate the people on chat. They're like, yeah, Pathfinder's D&D. And so that's why I had that question. It just popped in my head.
But I'm glad that Ben took the heat off of that one, because honestly, my opinion.
Confirmation from Poppin' Forest, it's legit.
Yeah, because my confirmation would have meant nothing. I am not only inexperienced in both the difference between Pathfinder and any of the actual different editions of D&D.
Oh.
Also, as a developer, we name things anything we want. And if you are a developer out there, you go, I don't. Yes, you do that.
Well,
it
gets more ridiculous, because the entire storyline of Pathfinder's development was that you had so D&D 3.5 was released. A lot of people liked it. It was released under open source, so people could take bits and pieces of the game and actually make the new system out of it. Or they would take that system and add their own thing. So it's like you could take that system and port it anywhere. And so when Wizards of the Coast said, okay, we're not going to be doing 3.5 anymore, we're going to switch to 4th edition, because it was open source, Pathfinder took D&D 3.5, took off the label and just put Pathfinder on it, and then swapped out, they made a few minor adjustments to it and then released it as Pathfinder. And so it's 98% D&D 3.5, but it was the reason why it was released was because there were people who still wanted to play 3.5, but they couldn't release it as D&D 3.5 because Wizards of the Coast is not going to support it anymore. And it's open source. Anyone can take that material. So they just took the material and just re-release it under a different name. And so...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as a player, when we were playing Pathfinder, you're rolling the same dice. You have practically the same spell, and I know that there's different mechanics in the spells and, different skill sets and stuff like that. But the only thing I could definitely tell, and I'm not fluent in Pathfinder yet, but the only real difference as a new player of Pathfinder that I could find is the character sheet. like that. The mechanics are still pretty much the same from back and forth.
I mean, to answer a question that was earlier stated, like, oh, why did you make your own game and not just make a different version of the game? Pathfinder. That's why.
That's
I
why.
want people to look at my game and go, oh, okay, yeah, it's got its own unique things. Yes, it uses dice just like D&D, but it's not a rip off of another game because, and this is just there. If people want to believe that, that's fine. But I will say, before making this game, and even till this recording right now, I've never been able to play a full campaign of D&D. And so therefore, all Mutants and Masterminds, Call of Cthulhu, any other tabletop RPGs, I've only been able to play one session, and that was about 2-3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I will just say now, I have not been able to rip anything off because I haven't had the chance.
Again, yet. You haven't had the chance yet.
Yeah. If you guys want to see more mechanics, maybe get onto the Patreon, start funding it, and then maybe I can get some more books and I can steal their ideas. Yeah.
Yep. I'll just clip that out of our YouTube and our podcast.
I am kidding.
Joe wouldn't steal anything.
No, of course not.
But Ben, you've played Mutants and Masterminds. Have you played? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So there is one thing I wanted to say. I even made a getting into D&D video. At the end of that video, I'm like, by the way, Pathfinder, it's D&D.
Yep. Yeah, that's what you have DM tips on your channel as well, and that was definitely stated.
Okay, but anyway, your other question you were going to ask about Masterminds.
Mutants and Masterminds. I've played GURPS before, and I see that you've DM'd GURPS before.
Yeah.
How is it different from DMing Mutants and Masterminds? And how are they similar? Maybe I should ask, how are they similar first?
Okay. So when I say that I DM'd GURPS, what happened is that we started setting up a GURPS game, and we're like, okay, we're going to make characters, and then all the players bailed once I started going through the character creation process, because it's like there's so many different options to pick from, and it's so complicated. Like, there's an entire skill list page which has something like 500 skills on it. Yeah. Like you can get skill ranks in nuclear physics, botany, gardening, like any of those, like anything that is a skill that you can think of, you can put ranks into it. Yep. And the players just look at that and like, no. And so that was that. But anyway, as far as Mutants and Masterminds, it's one of the, so the thing is that Mutants and Masterminds is very world generic. It kind of takes place in a modern day, but you can set it in the past, and you could also set it in dystopian or the future or something like that. And so it doesn't have like a set world, and it also really doesn't have like a solid monster manual. Like, I know there's like villain, I forget what it's called, but it's like there are certain villains that you can use, but the problem is they have to be custom tailored to the group and stuff like that, because you know how with superheroes, it's like if you don't have the one thing to beat the one guy, like, oh, he uses magic, we don't have anything that can counter magic, then you can't do something like that. So it's, at least in D&D, like, or any other RPG, like you have a character and they have villains, and the villains are designed to fight this specific character, but because the players can make whatever they want, the villains have to be tailor-made around what the players are capable of, and making sure that they'll have some interesting interaction back and forth.
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
I remember watching. Oh, sorry.
We had a question for Joe pop up.
Oh, okay.
I lost it. Sorry, go ahead. Continue, and I'll go back and find it because it's.
I was just going to say, with Mutants and Masterminds, that's actually something I watched. I watched your Mutants and Masterminds video, and that was actually the video that made me realize I need to subscribe to Buff and Forest, because I really no, honestly, man, I really enjoyed it. And as someone who is making, as someone who was making something based on superpowers and didn't want to use too many inspirations because I didn't want to rip off anything. When I was looking at that, I was thinking, instead of using it as a guideline as to how I want to make my game, I actually used it as a guideline as to how to not make my game.
Oh, I get it. Because you're like, that's already out there. They
Exactly.
I don't want to just be a clone of something else that's already out there. So
Exactly.
because
That's
in the other, I've realized the same thing where it's like whenever you go out and you find a mechanic and then people love it, it's like that's fine. You know, they like if I wanted to play that, I would just get that game. It's
yeah.
I mean, you can look to them as like, oh, okay, they have these interesting mechanics and stuff like that.
Mm,
But yeah, there's a certain point where it's like the game has to have its own identity, or otherwise it's just a bad
absolutely.
version of another game.
No, absolutely, and that's kind of why I was saying, like, you know, I wouldn't really ever steal anything because otherwise then it's no longer unique.
Yeah.
One of the things that like a friend of mine said to me, he said like he was looking over some of the on some of the very first original stuff on year one, and he said to me, like, after reading it, he was so busy doing his dissertation, and he just looked at him. You don't need magic, because originally I was thinking, oh yeah, because in like certain things magic exists in some superpower based, and he just looked at me and just went, you don't need magic, it's not unique if you have it as magic. And I was like, but I could add magic later. And he was like, no, because even though the magic system that I created was its own unique version of how magic can be used, he was like, no, because it complicates things. You'll be overdone with all of them. He said, if you want to add magic to another one, probably best to do that later. And so I'd focus more on the powers rather than actual just magic. So it's more like, oh, it's a pseudoscience, or it's almost weird as to how that they've gotten their powers, like bends in reality, rather than it just literally being, oh, they got them because of magic, and or magic exists. So we got rid of magic entirely, and it actually it gives its own individual like sort of feel to it, and yeah, it works a lot better than if it was to just be based more off like, oh, it's D&D but with superpowers and its own magic system. Then now it's actually its own game, and it has its own identity to itself.
I found the question.
Ah.
It was, how well do monsters from other systems, and Ben, you can help me with this, translate into Animite tales? Okay, so with monsters from D&D, you have pretty much like the same stats. It can have the same stats as a PC or as an NPC. You can translate that as well. Oh, somebody actually is a Jeff a cake. Sorry. Okay, so how how well do monsters from other systems translate into yours? So again, with D&D, you know, you have the stats. You can have stats and you can have personalities for monsters. GURPS as well. You can have you know, stuff like that. Fate core system, not so much. That's basically what the GM is telling you what this monster is, if there is a combat at all. And those are the ones that I know. So Ben, to start that question off, could you elaborate on how monster mechanics compare to other RPGs?
In which system?
That's a good question.
Just comparing monster stats between.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I said, like with D&D, you have the stats can be the same as a PC.
Yeah, honestly, I think with a lot of the focus on monsters in D&D is kind of just like physical stats and like saving throws and stuff like that, just so that way if they get targeted with a spell, this is how they save. These are the attacks that they do on their round. I do know that different NPCs and stuff in like Fate, they have these different abilities, and whenever players screw up, or I know in Dungeon World in particular, let's go to that one because I just ran that one, was that they would have these tags and these abilities, and whenever the monsters don't take actions on the monsters don't have a turn. Okay, they act whenever the players fail a roll. So, for example, they're like a player goes to attack, they fail, then the monster comes up and wha-bam, hits them or something. And so they'll have these different tags, and the tags are very kind of nebulous, and you can kind of play around with them. Like a monster will have a tag where when you miss with an attack, it says that it has a bite, and that could be suddenly it's grabbed you and it's got its leg, or it's dragging you somewhere and suddenly you're on the ground. And so it gives the GM that power to kind of interpret that tag however they feel fit. But a lot of times in other games that are more story driven or role playing, based, they'll give the GM quite a bit of power in order to kind of interpret the abilities however they want, which can lead to a lot of confusion as a GM. Like, what do I do? It's like, whatever you want.
So yeah, so hearing those examples and how the mechanics of monsters, so how would you interpret that for Animite Tales, Joe, for your RPG system?
No, I'll try and elaborate as much as I can. I will say, if people actually do want to know a little bit more, we do have obviously stuff on our Patreon that kind of explain it a bit more, and also our Discord. But if you want to hear more about it through the medium of the podcasts, obviously we will obviously be talking about them a little bit more in other sessions as well. But to shorten it down, the best way that I can sort of explain it is actually mythical creatures like dragons and beholders and krakens. Like, you have these creatures that have like immense, immeasurable power, size, and magic. Instead, it would be more like we actually do have an entire creature type where a superhuman can actually get the ability to transform into one of 4 different kinds of magical beast. And there's like some science explaining it, like, oh, it's just a large lizard who's also got lizard-like wings and also has the ability to breathe fire, and they're called dragons. But to base it a little bit more, you've also got like, to bring in a monster, what we would do is we'd say, okay, what stats do they have? How much health do they have? How tough are they supposed to be? And how common they should be in the game. So like, say for instance, like, you guys have got like an undersea water dragon that has like 1,500 health and it's supposed to be difficult. It's like, well, we don't have health by that much, that amount. But instead what we do is we'd say at maximum, or at least at minimum, depending on like the strength of the entire party, it would be like 500 health or maybe 1,000 health, depending on like how unfair a DM wants to make it. But it would be like, oh, it can do this amount of lightning damage, and we were like, yeah, we'll definitely have that, because some characters do actually have electrokinesis or living lightning, where it means that they're more resistant or immune to lightning. But then obviously it's like, oh, they're in water, or oh, they're having to deal with the fact that its claws can do this type of damage. And it's like, we can have it so that like we make it in different ways. But if you were to like take the Beholder, for instance, who has like, I think at least 3 types of insta-kill in D&D, like it has petrification rays, death ray, disintegrate ray, or something like that, like
innervation ray or something, which does necrotic damage.
yeah. And so I mean, if we were to have that, we would actually have it, but it wouldn't do insta kill. But instead what we'd actually have is that we'd actually have a system where it gets to roll a dice depending on that particular type of dice to see what ray it used on that particular person. So say for instance it has 8 different rays. So it's like, okay, we have a D8. We number each different ray, and then we roll that ray. Then the thing has to then roll a dice to see how accurate the shot is, and anyone who is being shot by it has to roll. If they don't evade, it's down to the luckiness of the actual dice. So instead it would be like, oh, a natural 8 and a natural 1 are the worst possible ones, because there's like a necrotic ray and then there's a disintegrate ray. If it gets either of the 2 of those ones, you cannot get hit by that, otherwise you will definitely die. We do so many different ways that we have it, so that then there's a fair enough assumption that, like, yes, you are fighting a creature that could kill you, but it's not like the DM can just go, oh yeah, they just shoot these rays constantly. It's more like it's a random chance what particular type of attack it uses out of the amount of attacks that it has.
Well, I hope that answered their question. That was an excellent answer.
If anyone else has any other questions, they can either come to us at the Baytarians Facebook page, or they can wait to see what else we have in the up and coming episode.
Yeah. And to add on to that, we will, me and my group, we will start using the Animite Tales, Joe's RPG system, in June. So very short. I have to, Joe and I are going to work together. We're going to write a story. No, the story's already written, kind of. A little bit.
Have you? Oh yeah.
I think of it, yeah. It's just the
I'm looking forward to
that. So yeah, that'll be coming in June. We'll do that, and we'll do an animation as well. I have an animator. It's amazing.
Oh, nice, awesome.
She has a degree in animation, and so she is working on the animation. She's testing it out right now, so I'm super excited about that.
Awesome.
That's work I have to do. But I really respect animators. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Ben introduced me to Fire Alpaca, and it took me 5 hours to do like what couple seconds of animation.
No, I completely believe you, because it's like, oh, like how do I boot it up? And then you boot it up, and then it's like, how do I set up the canvas? The canvas is the wrong size. I got to figure out how to save it. Got to open up the tutorial, watch a 20-minute tutorial just to figure out how to save it, correct file, the wrong file, so it doesn't load.
No, yeah, it took like all my willpower not to ask you question after question after question. Yeah, I was like, I need to figure it out. I need to figure it out. He can't be like holding my hand for this whole time. I need to be able to figure this out on my own. And I did. And I think the only question I asked you was, do you know any tutorials? But I was like, you know what? I can totally figure that out on my own. And I did. And I was so excited. I was like pumped. I was like, I made an animation.
I think the advice I said like, there's a lot of really good tutorials on YouTube you can watch, which is not like more specific, but it's like, unfortunately, it's like there's new stuff coming out, and so you don't really know which tutorial to select and stuff like that.
That's something that I learned from uni is that you can tutorialize almost anything, but when it comes to like figuring out how to do something, not figuring out how to not do something. Like if there's a bug or a problem, chances are there is a very low chance that there will be a tutorial like tutorials on how to get rid of this particular kind of bug on this particular day at this particular kind of moment. You're just like, please help me. But tutorials to do something or make something so common, and a lot of them are very helpful.
And or tutorials like this podcast and live stream, how to work on D&D and RPG.
Shameless plugging.
Please continue watching.
It's, so it'll be me and Joe, and we'll have a series of guests from here on out. Ben has a lot of good stuff coming up. So he's going to keep an eye. We sent him the Google Docs on our upcoming episodes. So if he has time, definitely. But we can't wait to see your new project. It's going to be awesome. You have released something just a few hours ago.
Yeah, actually, it was just a few hours ago I released the newest video, which was the end of the Turtle Friends campaign.
No.
So yeah, definitely go check that out right now. To highlight both of y'all, Joe, do you have anything you want to promote before I let y'all go?
Same old. Just anyone who's looking forward to or interested in seeing how Des and her group get on with using Animite Tales as their sort of core system for a one shot. We could definitely do with at the Baytarians. We could definitely do with some more support from you guys. We need people to sort of be part of Patreon and help sort of give us a fighting chance at being able to make this into a system that actually can earn us money as developers. So if you head on over to the Baytarians Patreon, there'll be a link in the description on the YouTube channel, but we also have our own at the Baytarians Twitter, as well as the Baytarians Facebook page, where we actually have the links on both of them. So if you could please help us sort of, it's less get on our feet, but more keep on them, doing the things that you guys want to see from us. We're not just going to be making the games. We're also going to be making novels. We've currently got 3 in the background at the moment that we want to sort of release at some point, based on characters that are actually in the worlds that you might actually see as NPCs later on in the stories once you can purchase the book.
Cool. And Ben, do you have anything else you wanted to promote other than the thing that I stole from you, which is basically telling about your new episode that just came out?
No, that was it. That was the one thing I wanted to promote.
Okay. We mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast, or the live stream today while you were out fixing your internet.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That was it.
And for me, the Puzzle Traveler will be up soon. I'll release that. And I think that's it. Oh, the Dallas Fan Expo. That was very, very fun for me. I got to meet some of our subscribers, which was amazing. And they love this show, this live stream. And and all the stuff we're doing. So that was surreal and really cool. I think my face went red the whole time because that was cool. I never experienced something like that. But next live stream, we will have Adan from Argentina. He is an animator, and he is really, really excited, and we're excited to have him. It'll be me, Joe, and Adan. And then after that, we will also have Red Dice Diaries, who's been watching as well, John from Red Dice Diaries. He is the guy that I was talking about yesterday, I think, where I was so embarrassed because I didn't understand Fate Core System that I was like, I can't ask him any more questions. I don't know what else to do with my life. And so, but I did reach out to him, and he's totally up for, so I'm going to ask, John, if you're watching right now, I'm going to ask you so many questions about the Fate Core System that your ear's going to explode.
That's, oh.
Go ahead.
At some point, hopefully, my younger brother, he should also be joining us at some point because he's the other one of the Batarians. It's me and my brother at the moment. Mm-hmm. We've had loads of play testers, and they're amazing. Along with Des, we've had some incredible play testers, and hopefully at some point my brother will be joining, who have his own sort of discussion on some of the things that he's sort of done as a narrator. As a first-time narrator as well, to a group who just kind of expected him to know everything, and he did at the time because he was just hearing me talk about it. To eventually, he kind of became a sort of a co-developer as well. So I mean, yeah. So hopefully we'll have him on at some point on an episode that kind of makes a bit more sense for him to join in.
Cool. Yeah, and if anybody's out there watching, and if you know of a YouTuber or an animator or just somebody that's really, 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 really amazing, like one of the people we're going to try to get is Team 4-Star as well. We're going to try to get one of them, and Matt Mercer. I've been leaving little tweets to Matt Mercer, but obviously I don't think that's going to get anywhere. But if there's somebody that you want, and if you want Ben to come back, because Ben loves petitions and,
and begging.
and begging. But yeah, definitely give us a shout out or anything like that. Let us know what you like about these live streams, what you don't like. Be gentle. No, be brutally honest. We are definitely looking for better ways to improve and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all I have.